And about 10 years ago, I told people, stop suggesting dashboards. What you want is a scorecard. And the biggest difference is that a dashboard tells you how fast you're going, and it tells you the direction that you're going, but it doesn't tell you where you want to end up. A scorecard is a dashboard that tells you where do you want to go and how far you are from that goal, or how closer you are and what do you need to get there. Completely different. And another thing that I know as an entrepreneur and as a person now after 51 years in this earth, you can never control and grow something that you don't measure. Welcome to the Break Free Podcast. Today we have an amazing second episode talking about the Stark team and Todd, their leader. Brother, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, brother. It's great to be here with you. I'm excited to tell you all about our organization and what we do.
Todd, I was listening to your first episode of the podcast, definitely one of the best we ever done. Can you give me a quick recap on what we talked about last time for the audience?
Yeah, we discussed my background, which was in carpet manufacturing. And I know that's a big leap to go into a healthcare business, but there's actually a lot of overlap, mostly surrounding things like leadership concepts, strategy, determining how you fit into a competitive market. There's a lot of things that we do at Stark that come from manufacturing, or probably from any business, frankly. Like how do you structure an organization? How do you strategically apply that structure to the business that you're in? How do you determine what part of the business you should be in? And so there's a lot of Stark is built on my experiences in manufacturing, and you can see it in how we operate internally. And so one of the early things I did, for example, was that I recognized that you have this experience in your own business. If you have a job like a sales job, it takes a certain kind of person to fill that position. If you have a job that's highly detailed and removed from people, like an engineer or an accountant, for example, it's almost the opposite personality traits that you have in that position. And it goes on and on and on throughout an organization. Like you have to find the best people to fit those positions. And it's fairly obvious when you have the wrong person in the wrong position. For example, we would never have, when I was in manufacturing, we would never have someone in accounts payable fly out to Georgia and close a big deal with Home Depot. It would be a disaster, right? And we certainly would never have a salesperson properly book transactions in accounts payable. That also would be a total disaster. And what struck me early on in our business, which started as a personal training and nutrition business, was that the personal trainer, either in an independent setting or in a commercial gym, they are operating as entrepreneurs. They are selling. They're doing a fairly technical job. They're assessing things like movement patterns. And that takes an individual that's got several skill sets. In most cases, they don't have anything but the selling skill set. Meaning the very best personal trainers around the country in the United States, and I'm sure this is the same in Canada, tend to be the best salespeople. And if they can't be great salespeople, they don't survive. And so there may be, in theory, great personal trainers out there or great strength coaches who can't communicate very well, who can't build relationships very quickly, that are really great at their craft, but because they can't get the client to purchase sessions, they go into teaching or something else, or engineering, or anything different than personal training or strength coaching. And so one of the first things I did at Stark was recognize that. And we began looking for we call them coaches in our environment, who are great technicians, who are not salespeople at all. Mm-hmm. And who also are not necessarily so technically adept that they can write exceptional programs, and nutrition is an entirely different set of skills. And so I separated all those roles, ensuring that the most sophisticated people in the company early on, and still today actually, were performing. They were doing jobs that were the most complex and the most technically demanding, and those are the jobs of writing nutrition plans and the jobs of writing training programs. And so we have a small team, and that's all that they do. We also have a separate team that does sales, and the coaches themselves really just coach. They get a program given to them. They can make adaptations based on how the client, we call it client students, actually how the student is moving and how they're feeling that particular day, but they're following a plan that's been laid out for them. And they're holding the student accountable to a nutrition plan, but they're not actually creating the nutrition plan themselves. And so, like every other organization across the world, but not in fitness at that point in time, we're very similar. We have specialization, and that's a manufacturing concept. And as a result, we can onboard coaches much more quickly, and we're able to retain a very sophisticated, high-level group of people at the top of the organization that do the most complex work for the student. So that's just a single example of how I've carried the experience that I had in manufacturing into our space. Interestingly, as we developed over time and we became a healthcare organization, the same exact problem, lack of specialization, exists in medicine. And by that I mean they don't operate in teams. And in my opinion, the human body is much more complex than a piece of carpet or a Tesla automobile or any other complex consumer product that you might buy. And they're all created in teams. There's a product development team, there's a finance team, there's a sales team, there's a marketing organization, all working together. They're fighting, they're arguing, they think a product should look like X when it should be like Y, that the finance people are arguing that it's not going to be a profitable product. And so eventually through that conflict, all parties learn and the consumer gets a better product as a result. In our space, that conflict doesn't occur at all. It doesn't occur at all, not internally anyway, merely externally. And the closest you can get to that is, let's say you have knee surgery and your general practitioner refers you to an orthopedic surgeon who performs the surgery. And when the surgery is complete, the orthopedic surgeon refers you to a physical therapist, but they never actually speak. They don't work together, they don't collaborate. The physical therapist doesn't say, hey, orthopedic surgeon, I think you should do this slightly differently because every time I get a patient from you, this is the problem I see. None of that ever happens, which is mind-blowing to me as a business person because it's so common everywhere else. So at Stark, you have that. Simple things like checks and balances. Someone's supervising the work that a coach is doing.
Incredible. And it's important. The lesson here is that your skills are transferable, right? Your leadership is transferable. Like, your original manufacturing experience has nothing to do with healthcare. Yet, you're employing all the skills that you developed there to create a multi-million-dollar company in healthcare, which, by the way, I want to talk about that. I want to emphasize, we as entrepreneurs have the problem or the tendency to compare ourselves always with the next bigger guy or with the next bigger business without recognizing that where we are is already a huge blessing. And I tell you this because I have done some research. Most businesses, don't make it after 2 years. The businesses that make it 10 years are very few. Now, successful businesses, most of them don't break the mark of $5 million, regardless of where they are at. Imagine getting to $10 million now. I've been in love with working out and exercising and being a healthy person since 2013. Some people used to call me a gym rat. I'm not like that anymore. I have a beautiful balance now, but I know how hard it is to grow in that industry. In fact, I considered myself sometimes, at some point. And then I said, no, this is crazy. Like, whoever gets into this business must be very tough or very dumb.
Right.
And here you are.
We're both.
Right?
We're both. Yeah.
Here you are running a $10 million business in the healthcare industry with focus on preventive medicine, because that's what you do. And that's why I wanted to call you back again. As I was mentioning to you, I was watching one episode of The Chosen when one of these disciples, the guy is super fit and he's working out every morning and he's taking care of himself. And the other guys were telling him, like, why do you waste time in your body? It's meaningless. And then he says, you want to have a peaceful mind? Start with your body. Try to be peaceful and sick at the same time and see how it goes.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. It's interesting that you describe it like that, because the fascinating thing about the body is it also goes the other direction. If you want to have a healthy body, you have to have a healthy mind. If you want to have, and we're talking about in a gym setting, specifically body composition. And inside of Stark, that's merely 1/8 of what we would consider optimal health. And that's not considering mental health. It's merely considering the physical part of your health. For example, cardiovascular health is critical. It's not something, maybe you were a gym rat when you were younger, and young people don't need to be concerned yet about cardiovascular health. But by the time you're 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, my age, cardiovascular health is a serious consideration, because if you have a heart attack, your body composition for sure is going to collapse. Strength is also a consideration. Strength and body composition don't really necessarily go hand in hand. You can build muscle or lose fat, and in both circumstances, you can potentially lose strength, and strength is a critical component of longevity. Having your hormones managed, or at least supervised, so that you know where they are, that's a critical part of your health in total, both in your cognition, your mental health, your cardiovascular health, your orthopedic health. All of those things are affected by your hormones. Sleep, stress, and recovery, massive part of your overall health. And matter of fact, particularly at our age, maybe you're not as old as I am.
About the same.
About the same. Okay, you're coming up on me. So without great sleep and recovery, or put a different way, managing your stress really well through things like meditation, or making sure you're getting enough deep sleep at night, or whatever issues you have, making sure that they're somehow managed, you won't have the body composition of a young person. You can never get there. Your hormones will fall apart. Your strength will collapse. Your cardiovascular health markers will decline. You're at higher risk of a cardiac event. It just goes on and on and on. So all of these areas of your health, they affect one another, and there's this constant kind of tug of war. And internally we use it in the form of a wheel, kind of like the wheel of life, but we call it the wheel of health. You're familiar with the wheel of life? Yeah, where all the different categories of wheel or categories of your health are considered. It's the same thing with your health, but most people don't really think about the repercussions of having diminished, let's say, gut health, for example, which is another part of health that we consider, or unmanaged or undirected or unsophisticated approaches to nutrition would be another great example. Not doing things to make sure your orthopedic health is well managed. Any one of those 8 that I just referenced, and ultimately the ninth, which would be your mental health, are potential health disasters, and everything else can kind of collapse behind it. But the way we look at it at Stark is that those are health opportunities. And so if you can, let's just say, eat healthy, which is, I think, how you probably describe yourself, that will prevent a certain level of disease state, right? It will make you feel better and keep your energy levels reasonably high. But what if you can eat nearly perfectly 90% of the time? What if you're eating in an optimal way for your body? You get all of this additional opportunity associated with your health, with your body, including your mental health that comes along with it, like you described earlier. That changes everything for you. So when we talked last time, you mentioned that I am a great representation of our work product. I agree. Mm-hmm. But you're merely seeing, it's like an iceberg, and the tip of the iceberg is all you see. That's the only part of my health that you're actually seeing, but it's built on all of those other categories that I described, which makes it very, very sturdy. Does that make sense? And so when people, that's a common thing, they most think that because you are fit, you're healthy. And it's not necessarily the case, as exhibited, for example, by fitness competitors who go to extreme lengths to look a certain way on stage. And I can promise you in the last couple of months, and potentially indefinitely, they're not optimally healthy. There are parts of their health that are falling apart. Maybe it's orthopedic health. You can see this in old bodybuilders, for example, that walk around with canes, or have heart attacks at a fairly young age, cardiovascular health. They're not taking care of themselves in a holistic way. They're merely trying to target that body composition outcome. So if you go straight to it, it generally is not lasting, and it's going to cause other problems. So we look at the entire body. So when people describe, like you described, I'm a great representation of our work product. My retort is typically, we don't really make people beautiful. That's not our purpose. We make beautiful people, which is to say that we surround them and make sure that all of these parts of their health are optimal. And sometimes it can take years. Sometimes it could take months. It depends on the individual. But by optimizing someone's health, it changes everything. For example, if I ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel? What would your answer be?
Right now?
Right now.
9.5.
9.5.
Yeah.
What if I told you that the scale was actually 1 to 15 and you just don't know it? Yeah. So that is the experience. So I have a great example. This is a recent example. They pop up all the time in our student base. But recently there's a guy named, I'm just going to call him Mike because I can't share private health information. Mm-hmm. And Mike has been struggling with low testosterone for years. All the indications: fatigue, a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of depression, year after year packing on fat in all the wrong places, including visceral fat, which can be pretty dangerous. That's the fat in and around your organs that kind of makes your stomach stick out. Low libido, just a discounted drive in general. So it's hard for him. He's married. His wife, I'm going to call her Sally. So Sally and Mike. And Sally, they're just getting older together, and she's accepting, and she's on a different path. And she's becoming optimally healthy, and there's not going to be any strain in their relationship. They're fully committed to each other. But Mike continues to decline. And they have a family of, I think they have four kids, and they're older. The couple they're in their late 40s to late 50s. And we finally, because the other healthcare providers in Mike's life were fighting this, we finally convinced them to allow us to put Mike on hormone replacement therapy. And Mike was not able to get the body composition he wanted without it. His cardiovascular health, his heart health, was going to be perpetually problematic as a result. His strength will certainly be impaired. His joint health is constantly bothersome if you have low sex hormones. When you have low sex hormones, you don't make good decisions. So he has a harder time with nutrition, with discipline around nutrition. And so much of his wheel is compromised because of this sex hormone. It should just be a speed bump, but it was kind of a mountain to climb. And he wasn't going to get there naturally. And we don't lead with pharmaceuticals. They're kind of like the last step with us at Stark, but we use them when we think it's appropriate. And so finally he agreed, and we spoke to all of his doctors, two of whom continued to disagree. And about, I don't know, a month ago, Mike came to me, and he had this little spark in his eyes. And he said, Todd, I'm almost there. I can't believe how I feel. I'm like, oh, great. That's great to hear, Mike. That's nice. I'm happy for you. It's just the beginning. Like, all of these other parts of his health are going to start to expand as a result. And he's going to have a long, healthy, full life that he was probably not going to have without it. His wife came up to me on a different day and said, "Thank you for giving me my husband back."
Wow.
Our marriage has never been this strong since before we had kids, which was, I want to say their oldest is probably 23 or 24.
Wow. That alone makes me want to wake up every morning and go back to work and just help somebody else, isn't it?
Yeah.
What a way
yeah.
to
And
live a
so,
life of fulfillment.
yes. So he's always had the capacity. But there was this part of his health that was an anchor, an albatross, holding him, making him sink. And he finally agreed to allow us to treat for it, and everything else looks bright and shiny from this point forward. And when I say that we don't make people beautiful, like we could not get Mike to drop 50 pounds because there's so much in the way. But with this particular treatment, Mike is opening up like a beautiful flower. Like everything changes from here. He will be better at his work. He's now already a better husband, according to Sally. He will be a better father. He will make more money because he is thinking clearly for the first time in decades. He will be able to give more to the community. He's involved in the Jewish community, for example. And his impact on that community will be so much greater because of his ability to his increased capacity, his newfound increased capacity. Body composition, eventually he will, like me, be a great representation of Stark's word product from a tip of the iceberg standpoint. But the rest of the iceberg will be in place.
Yeah.
And that's really what we do.
And this is just a specific example with this specific case. And like you said, you have almost 8 points that you're always monitoring that involves a healthy person, right?
Yep.
And that's, I tell people, I run a software company and we do a lot of client dashboards, right? We do a lot of client-facing portals where they can get whatever it is that the business that we're serving is doing. And about 10 years ago, I told people, stop suggesting dashboards. What you want is a scorecard. And the biggest difference is that a dashboard tells you how fast you're going, and it tells you the direction that you're going, but it doesn't tell you where you want to end up. A scorecard is a dashboard that tells you where do you want to go and how far you are from that goal, or how closer you are and what do you need to get there. Completely different. And another thing that I know as an entrepreneur and as a person now after 51 years in this earth, you can never control and grow something that you don't measure. If you don't measure, how can you grow something that you don't know how it's going? Like, how do you know that you need gas on your tank if you don't have if you don't have a control that tells you you're running out of gas?
Right. That's an interesting point that you bring up. Diagnostics are critical. Having a scorecard is critical, and if you think about your business, for example, in your software business, the services that you provide to businesses to develop software and provide for a scorecard that's easily populated with data. Think about your own body and the bodies of the listeners. How many people out there actually know where they are and where they should be in all of these categories that I described? I bet you probably a fraction of 1%.
Exist.
Yes. And so this is another concept I brought from manufacturing. What gets measured gets managed. It's very simple, and it's not just a manufacturing concept, it's a business concept. We apply it to the body. That's why we have a DEXA scan that gives in each location that provides for real, as accurate as possible, information about body composition. Because without it, you have no idea. You merely look at a picture or step on a scale, and it's very inaccurate. It's why we use labs. We have full-time phlebotomists in every location because we're constantly running labs. When I say constantly, I mean like for most of our students, it's once a quarter. full labs on people. And we could see not just a point in time and where we want them to be, but we can see a trajectory. Like, are they heading on the right path? Imagine going to your doctor once every 5 years for a checkup, and the doctor says, you're looking fine, you're within the normal range. And the normal range, I don't know about you in Canada, but in the United States, the normal range means you're really unhealthy.
Yeah.
And your doctor...
Some governments cannot even tell us how, what measurements to have, right? It's crazy, right?
It's crazy. I don't know that it's their role to do it, but they are doing it, and it's not a good idea to look at the averages, particularly when it comes to your health, and say, well, I'm happy, I am average. I mean, how would you ever say that about any other part of your life whatsoever? Probably not. But people accept that, and then they just go on and they live their lives just like they were before, without making any changes, and just keep checking up. And as they decline, as they get older, eventually they're going to be below the average, below the norms. And then they're going to get treated for it, which is going to be something like replacing a hip or surgery or cancer or beta blockers, something related to cardiovascular health. It's going to be something along those lines to merely bump them back up to what we would consider to be average. And that shocks me. I've never run a business where I thought average was okay. And certainly at Stark, when we are managing bodies, average is frightening to me. We want everybody to be above average, to be optimal, so that there's the complete absence or the greatest distance between a state of sickness and a state of health that's possible. We don't even know what's possible, frankly, because not a lot of organizations are exploring what that looks like. But we are, because we want the distance between sickness and health to be as large as possible. Indeed, we want the experience of that to be just absolutely astounding. And I think that we are getting closer and closer to that. But I also believe that we have to have mental health optimization as the last component, the ninth part of health, because that is in the way of many of our students from achieving optimal health, or in the way of many of our students making high-level nutrition and lifestyle decisions, because things like alcohol, for example, get in the way. So we're as we get closer to the possibility of things like psychedelic-assisted therapy being legal in the United States, that will likely become a part of our standard services in the future. And it's probably going to be sometime in 2024. And that will help with removing things like self-limiting beliefs, or the recognition of the fact that you're self-medicating with something like alcohol, or making poor lifestyle choices in general, missing workouts because you're lacking the self-awareness that you need in order to recognize where you're going to end up in a decade. So just continue.
You touch a great point. For me, mental health is number one, and it's connected to your body, right? Like, your mental health is produced by your brain, but it's also involved with your hormones and your emotions and all that. I'll give you my example. I discovered this interconnectivity after I collapsed. I collapsed trying to become a millionaire in 2011, and I had a heart attack. I thought I was invincible because I was in my late 30s, and I over abused my body with alcohol, with 18 hours of work a day, with excess stress, and then I collapsed. And then my doctor became my psychologist, and she told me, I can give you these pills so you control all your anxiety, so you don't get another heart attack that would probably kill you. But you're very young. What you gotta do is change your lifestyle. So to make the long story short, I took the first vacation in a long time. It was over a month, and I broke my business apart and reinvented myself. But it didn't work. I mean, it worked for a little bit, but 2 years later, I went back to where I was, almost having a heart attack. And then I said, I'm a man of faith, I'm Christian. So I said, Lord, I don't know what to do. But I remember that I was a disciplined person because I was in the military for 2 years when I was a young kid. So I said, I need to figure this out. And all I know is how to move my body and how to discipline my body. I was 40 pounds overweight. I had a heart attack 2 years before. I joined a gym and I told my people, listen, I'm going to spend a lot of time in this gym until I figure out how to do this. And I remember 7 days into the workouts, I joined a program with a personal trainer online, very famous trainer, Chris Getting, and I did his 90-day body transformation. But as I was going into like the second week, it was an hour and a half of workout a day. I ended up working out 4 hours a day. Because the other 3 hours I was walking and running on the treadmill. Why? Because I was realizing that my problem was mainly here, my head. And then this beautiful healing process started to happen. So as I worked out more and as I controlled my nutrition, because the whole part of the whole plan, very strict nutrition, it was horrible, by the way, but very healthy. Right? I had to prepare my meals. It was like, and because I'm a disciplined person, I actually was able to follow through even though I was depressed. Like I was at the bottom of the bottom. Like that was my last resource, And I lost the 40 pounds in 3 months, in 90 days. I went from 200 and something to 159.
Wow.
I was like 28% body fat to 11% body fat. But that's nothing. That's just the side effect. That's the visible part of my transformation. What really happened is I went back to my faith. I went back to praying. I went back to realizing that I was messed up in my head. I was focusing on the wrong things in life, right? I recovered my family, like everything. I changed my business around. I focused on the culture of the business that I didn't know that I existed. But it was a marriage between working out and mental health. And through scripture, right? The word meditation in the Bible is over 12 times, but it says meditate in the word. And so what does that mean? Well, we're just beginning to do this with my wife. We do an hour prayer meditation every day. But when we get into a collapse, because this happens, life happens, right? If you get into a roadblock, we have this, for example, if you have, if we're feeling fear of something that hasn't happened, then we meditate in the word and we say, I haven't given you a spirit of fear. I have given you a spirit of power, of love, and of a sound mind. And we get to repeat this over and over again and really trying to understand what each word means. And after 10, 15 minutes, the fear goes away, the sound mind comes back, and the spirit of power and love comes back into my heart. And then I go work out if I need to work out. Mm-hmm. You see? But without that, I wouldn't even have the mental capacity to go and pick up a couple of weights or to go on the treadmill for half an hour. So it's like that, right? Mm-hmm. That's why I really admire what you do. And regarding the medicines that you're using, they are medicines, and they have to be under a control professional. Like a professional has to give you these types of aid. For example, if you're doing your hormone therapy, you gotta have the best doctors that know what to do.
Yeah, you have to.
These people, they take it on themselves. Talking about these other drugs that are getting legalized, they are actually drugs and they need to be monitored by a professional. For example, I discovered that I had ADHD, right? And a big part of my whole life problems and successes was because of this condition. Now I have this pill. It's called Concerta. It's been diagnosed by a professional. I went to have 3 opinions and I got the right doses now. And now I live my life in peace because now the chemicals in my brain are balanced. I'm the same guy, but you actually saw the difference in me this morning. But it's because I am actually doing therapy with the right professional in charge. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So thank you for your work. Really,
you're welcome.
Thank you for your work.
You're welcome.
Tell me, when somebody comes into your one of your centers, what do they look like? Is it actually a gym with clinics, or like, can you explain how your environment is?
It depends on which door you come into. It may look like a doctor's office or it may look like a gym. We have both. It's a doctor's office with a gym. Yeah, so we have, there are the rooms, some of the rooms have to be completely separated, like a DEXA scan room, for example, has to be inspected by the state of California, which is where we're located currently, has to be separated from certain parts of the rest of the facility, because it's a very light duty X-ray machine that's designed specifically to measure body composition. Some parts of the facility have to be separated as well for privacy, and other parts are just wide open. It just depends on what it is.
So, like, I do understand that this is changing lives. So let's say I'm a brand new person. I'm overweight. I feel bad in my life. I don't have any energy. Do you actually have a customized plan for every patient after you do your analysis, or everybody kind of takes it all, or you have different programs? How does it work?
We do. We have an intake process that gives us the data that we need in order to determine what it is that you need to do. So the intake process includes a DEXA scan, so we set a benchmark for where your body composition is starting. And then we run a broad range of labs that can sometimes lead to additional labs. So that they also may lead to us referring you out. Periodically, for example, we run a broad spectrum of labs, the standard labs, and we see a spike in white blood cell count, for example. And we've never seen that before in that particular student. We refer out to an oncologist and we pick up early prostate cancer. That's happened several times. Or there's a type of melanoma that we recently saw in a student that's, what's it called? It's inactive melanoma or something like that, which is really unusual. Had no idea he had it. A dermatologist would never be able to see it. We saw it in his labs. And the reason we were able to see it is because we run them so frequently that any deviation from where they've been sticks out like a sore thumb. Does that make sense? So
you are really saving lives.
Yeah, well, we're just catching things really early. We're not looking for states of sickness or disease states. We're looking for areas of opportunity. So the net that we cast over someone's health is very large, because we want to impact 50 data points rather than simply looking at like a total cholesterol level, for example. We want to understand, well, what parts of that person's cholesterol need to be improved upon, and what parts need to be decreased, and how will we do that? Our primary methods of treatment are exercise and nutrition. That's the type of medicine that we use. But how we use that is where it becomes customized per the individual. So there's a lot of information that's gathered from the DEXA scan, from a broad spectrum of labs, from the orthopedic assessment that we do internally as well, that gives us information about how people move. And we take all that information and put it into a bucket, and the various individuals that create treatment plans, exercise plans, nutrition plans, grab what they need and ask questions among the rest of the team, and they collaborate like in every other business, except ours, like we discussed, definitely in a manufacturing company. And out comes a plan that's comprehensive, that includes a very specific type of exercise, a very specific type of eating, influence around things like improving deep sleep, maybe adding meditation, potentially adding things like that are more aggressive, like IV therapy or hormone replacement therapy, but those tend to come down the road if the other approaches don't work. Yeah, sometimes supplements.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I have experienced that in my life, where actually I started taking clean cholesterol and eating more eggs, and just adding all the components that build up testosterone, and it actually works. Mm-hmm. So I haven't had to go the route of like hormone replacement therapy, and I don't think I will, because on top of that, working out, it produces human growth hormone, and that also helps with testosterone. So everything is together, isn't it? It's incredible.
It is together. Yep. Yeah, you can't separate them. That's why we don't operate in a method in a way that keeps them separated.
You know, it's so sad that we take better care of our fancy cars than we take care of our bodies.
Absolutely. We get them well maintained, cleaned on a weekly basis, or even more, sometimes on a daily basis. Yeah, we take great care of those cars, but yeah, not our bodies. Not our bodies.
Insane. It's insane. So, brother, thank you so much for your time. Again, it's
It was a pleasure.
47 after the hour. I don't know where time goes with you. One last question before we leave.
Yeah.
If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
You better take care of your body. You can't live somewhere else.
You better take care of your body. While you're in this earth, your body is your house.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the Bible says that is the temple of the Holy Spirit. You're a walking temple. So how come you're not taking care of it?
Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense.
Brother, thank you so much once more. If you can tell people where they can find your stores, your gyms online, where can they find you?
Starklife.us. Stark, STARK life.us.
Fantastic. Brother, thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
This is your house. Whenever you want to come back, I would love to have you back.
Thank you.
Blessed rest of the week.
You too. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free Podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.